I've been modeling the bombing of Iran for 20 years. The fact is the modeling has held up. And literally month by month by month, when we were first here, the big surprise for most people was that we bombed the regime in Iran and it still stood. It survived, even though we killed the supreme leader and something like 137 of their top leaders. Think about that. So that would be like if somebody killed our president, his wife, the first lady, members of the first family, half of the cabinet, all of the leaders in the Pentagon, all of the leaders in the CIA, and about a third of the Congress. That is what we did to Iran in those opening weeks in March. And nonetheless, that regime survived. And that was something that modeling showed for that 20 years. That was based on substantial patterns in history where air power alone had never toppled a regime, going all the way back to World War I. Most people had not really heard that before. Many people, even in the military, did not fully know how much President Trump went up against the weight of history. Then we shifted. We shifted to 6 weeks of a bombing campaign. And then what did we do? We shifted over to a 2-month blockade. Well, that was another version of punishment. So
the US said that they were going to block the Strait of Hormuz, basically trying to take control of it themselves.
That's right.
And therefore kind of punishing the rest of the world.
Well, they didn't want to punish the world. That did happen, but what they wanted to do was punish Iran. So they were trying to coerce Iran to get the government to surrender control of Hormuz. So keep in mind, what happened is on February 28th, that regime change bombing happened and it went on for a few days. But by March 2nd, March 3rd, Iran controlled Hormuz, literally within a few days. The ships stopped cold. And they basically have not reopened except for teeny tiny periods of time in a modest way. And then you're stuck. How do you get Iran to give up control of Hormuz, or do you let Iran continue to control Hormuz for as far as the eye can see? That's been the dilemma we've been in, Stephen, since really the first week in March. And now it's become clearer to the world. That is the core dilemma. We're at a fork in the road. Either we physically take Hormuz back, all those other tactics, even the MOU didn't work, didn't get
the MOU,
the Memorandum of Understanding,
which was I sat here with JD Vance and he told me that they were about to sign an agreement with Iran to ultimately end the war. And they had that agreement.
Yeah.
JD told me that it was about to be signed. A couple of weeks later, here we are. They're back to bombing each other.
Yeah, there's really two big issues with this, Stephen, with the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. I do believe that Vice President Vance sincerely thought it was going to had a good chance of ending the war. But there's a big problem here, Stephen, which is when you listen to Vice President Vance, he approached this as a business deal. So he kept talking about all the benefits that were going to come to Iran if they performed fee for service. We want the strait open and we're going to offer you money in different ways if you will open the strait. Well, this is just a fundamental misunderstanding of international politics. This may work great in real estate. I'm not saying it doesn't. But in a major war like this, what's at stake is the balance of power. The balance of power. Now, I want to explain that before the war started, there was a balance of power where America was ascendant, Israel was the rising power, and Iran was actually the declining power in the region. What happened almost within, again, 2 weeks of the war starting is the balance of power was shifting dramatically. When Iran became in control of Hormuz, this represents tremendous power in the future. That wealth, all of the potential that, even though it hadn't been realized yet, equates to not just money to put in coffers, but it equates to military power. It equates to the ability to influence other states in the region, to build a sphere of influence. This is power in terms of major power politics that was shifting here. And so with the MOU, as you look at the MOU, JD Vance appears, we could just look at it, he appears to have thought this was a business deal. So he appears to have thought, we're going to hold up the promise of, say, $300 billion. It will eventually fall on you if you will just agree to do what we want and behave. Those aren't the clauses that matter to Iran. The clauses that mattered to Iran were the clauses which directly relate to the balance of power in solidifying Iran, its control of Hormuz. And essentially, this MOU is fundamentally a roadmap to Iran becoming the regional hegemon.
Hegemon? What does that mean?
The most dominant state in the Persian Gulf in the Middle East.
Wait, so you're saying that this agreement would make them the most dominant state in the Middle East?
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't they sign it within a heartbeat?
They did. They did. Iran, in fact, most of these points were exactly the points that President Trump said he would never sign in April when Iran presented the initial 14-point plan in April.
So
why
are we back at war then?
Well, let me just explain. The key things that happened here is that, number one, notice in Article 5, it says that Iran will make the arrangements with Hormuz, that is the ships with Hormuz, and it will not charge for 60 days. It doesn't say it will never charge. It says only 60 days. So think about that this is already written into the agreement that President Trump is signing. And then if you say, well, what's going to happen down the road? It's going to be Iran and Oman who are going to determine the future fees. There's no mention here of the United States. There's no clause to even let the United States wiggle itself in. This is a perfectly clearly written clause, and this basically gives Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz and also of the discretion to set the fees for as far as the eye can see with no constraint whatsoever.
How do we know that this is the actual document?
Because both the Iranian government and the White House put out exactly the same document, word for word, so that we can actually compare them literally word for word. So this is exactly the document that President Trump signed. There's no question that we have like an earlier draft. Now, there were some earlier drafts leaked by Bloomberg. That's not what this is. This is the final one. But let me go a little bit further here, Steve. So here we're talking about the strategic base of Iran. And keep in mind, controlling Hormuz means controlling 20% of the world's oil. That's a fantastic amount of wealth and strategic power to build on in the future. No limit says nothing about you can't spend it on missiles, anything else. But up here with Lebanon, the first article. So here.
So when you say article, this document contains 10, is it 10?
14.
14 different points. And when you
14
say articles,
different points. And there are 3
points.
points that are really the critical action points that matter here. This promise of $300 billion down the road, this is so far, this is like holding out funny money to the Iranians. These are the things that are actually short term because this is happening now.